Wow, that's the introduction you want to hear. My name is Brian Eoff. I'm a data scientist at Bitly. We are a startup in New York. Just quick show of hands, how many people know what Bitly is or have used it? Yes, making inroads. We are a URL shortener and social analytics service. We're a 40-person company right now. Let's see. We're considered like a big data company in the New York big data space, and this is some of our numbers for about 1 month. We have about 3 billion decodes. That's when people are clicking on a shortened link. Of those, about 900 million come from mobile devices. Encodes, which are people shortening links, are 750 million, and about 30% of all links shared on Twitter are Bitly-based links. I think right now we power north of 25,000 custom URL shorteners for people like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, the Huffington Post. So our goal is to allow people to save content, to shorten it, and to share it on online spaces and get information about how that content is doing. And I'm just going to go over a few use studies or things where I came to the Bitly data and I learned something new or interesting. So the first part of that is this idea of engagement shifts. Basically, over time, we build models of how traffic looks, how traffic coming from various places looks, and when that model is proven wrong. In academia, that used to be the most awful thing. Your model was wrong, you know, you're not going to publish. But in this world, when your model turns out to be wrong, it's really interesting because you learn something that you weren't aware of. So the first one is, this is Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was a young man who was shot in a suburb of North Orlando. And when I was doing academic work, I was focusing on, towards the end, understanding like hate speech and viral language in online social networks. And this story resonated heavily with me because people were taking these huge opinions of it. And I looked at the Bitly data to see how the Trayvon Martin story progressed. And I found something kind of interesting to me.
Brian, we should probably quickly point out that it was an African-American boy who was shot unarmed by a
much older man.
By a much older man.
George Zimmerman. So, sorry. The shooting took place on February 26. And as you can see from the plot, for about 2 weeks, there was no online presence. This was, at best, a local story. People in North Florida were concerned, and that was it. And then 2 weeks after that, for some reason, traffic started to grow. And it became a bigger national story. And then it became a politicized story because President Obama commented. He said, and I think the quote is, "If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon," which all of a sudden took a story that was a crime story to a very political story. And then people fell on both sides of the political spectrum. Republicans thought he shouldn't have said that, and it thus became more politicized. And then the story progressed to a media story where the media started covering how the media was covering it, which was really strange, where they would talk about how ABC News got this wrong, or this media organization shouldn't have done that in responsibility. And then the story would slowly die down, and something else would happen, and it would start following the same progression. So we're also looking at how the story migrated geographically, how it went from being a very local southern story around March 2nd to being a more national story. This plot, I think, represents this whole idea of engagement of models. So traffic, by and large, follows a sinusoid pattern, where there's a lot of activity around midday and not many people are clicking on links in the middle of the night. And this was Egypt last year. And this was Bitly traffic coming out of Egypt. And as you can see, all of a sudden, it stopped. And it was the moment during the Arab Spring when Egypt had the internet turned off. And it was just a strange, like to see that data, to see that pipe all of a sudden go from a few 100,000 clicks a day to 4 was just really surreal. And then you started to ask, what were those 4 clicks that were actually getting through? What were the content? Who were those people? And it kind of congealed in my head that engagement shifts are this idea of when traffic peaks, when it falls off, when devices have a big gain versus a big loss is one of the most interesting things you can find in data. All right. So the second is this idea of sharing versus clicking. Being at Bitly it allowed me to kind of see the information people were sharing online, but also the information they were consuming. And that was eye-opening because, so on June 13th, I pulled this right before I came, the story on the left had the top amount of clicks, and it was a Kim Kardashian, Kanye West story. Justin Bieber is Twitter, Kim Kardashian is Bitly. It's amazing the amount of traffic this person is able to get. But that was the top decoded story. On the right was the top shared story, which was about global top-level domains. June 13th, ICANN published the list of all the global top-level domains that were being auctioned off or submitted for. So like Google wants .lol, Apple wants .apple. And it was just this weird dichotomy where you saw this very serious technological news as being what people share and what people are putting themselves out as this is the content that represents them versus very celebrity gossip based, which is what drives an insane amount of traffic. And it's a little depressing at first because it's this theater of celebrity and versus real media and real news. So that was my colleague Matt LeMay has this amazing picture, which I should have included, where it's a cat dressed as a chicken, and it says, "I'm a chicken." And that's the thing, is people give this online perception of what they want to appear as versus the content they actually consume. And how can we use that information when we build services such as recommendation engines? And you don't necessarily want to offend someone by constantly saying you should look at celebrity gossip, even though that's the most popular thing. And it's walking that steady line of understanding that people present themselves in one way versus the content they choose to consume. And no moral judgments on that. It's not right, it's not wrong. It's just a fact. And we have to take that in consideration when we make algorithms. So that's all. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And now I'm going to say how we messed it up and take the hit.
Come on over and take the hit. Very upset.
All right. First problem.
First problem. So 3 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago?
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago, Bitly is obviously this link shortener. So if you ever have the huge link, you shorten it, which is great. And it was always the same. Their website was always the same. You could log in and sign up, and I have all my Bitly links. I take my long URL, and I put it into Bitly, and then it shortens for me. And if you add a plus to the end of any Bitly link, you will get all sorts of data below it, like tons and tons of data. I loved it. Then, on this day, they changed it. How many people here were shocked when Bitly changed everything? Look at this. Look at these people. These are the people. Now, tell us what happened, because it was very funny backstage. You were sort of telling us what went down.
It was an interesting experience because I was traveling at the time, so I got to witness it secondhand on Twitter, and all of a sudden, the switch got flipped and it progressed over. It was amazing technical rollout. First of all, there were no bumps, there were no hiccups. It was well done by the tech people. But then all of a sudden, you hear Roger Ebert tweets that it's a catastrophe, and it's that moment of wait a minute, Roger Ebert uses our service, and then Patton Oswalt asked us very nicely to change it back, and he would forgive us. We were compared in arrogance to the president of Syria, which it was amazing, and you had to take this there was this moment where you had to feel like, okay, strong response. Strong response is better than indifference, but people are saying they hate you.
Yeah, and it was hard.
It was hard, but then they would say, I hate you.
Let me stop you there for 1 second. What actually happened?
What actually happened was we took the idea of basically pushing a lot more of this concept of you saving links. We still offer all the shortening services, we still offer the sharing services, but allowing you to have a repository for all your bitmarks, our bookmarks, and a place where you can easily share and get feedback and also understand your network and what other people are sharing similar to you.
Okay, great. I really appreciate your presentation. It's so enlightening, and definitely have a conversation. These are the data guys that are going to be setting up what content is going to be doing in the next 10 years. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Brian. Oh, yeah, one question. Yeah, what were the 4 clicks that were able to make it through via Egypt or Syria? Was it Syria?
Give you names? It was Tim.
It was Tim in the suburbs.
They were going to BBC News sites, and I never quite figured out. how it was done. It was over a very like an Android-based device. So
they were on a mobile phone, possibly,
they were on mobile,
and they were able to get through
somehow. They, you know,
using a Tor, or you don't know.
I have no idea. Like
Wow.
because my first thought was that someone had a VPN set up through Egypt, but even if then, that would have gone online first, offline.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you never found the guy who was getting out of Egypt.
I decided not to track him down.
Yeah, he's probably a guy with a gun.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Brian.
Thank you.